The Spurs may have just unleashed a nightmare for the entire NBA. Wemby is only the beginning. With Castle exploding and Harper rising, San Antonio could have 3 All-NBA stars. But losing their defensive architect could change everything.
I agree with Perk. I'm giving the credit to the San Antonio Spurs. Wemby came out and set the tone. We've seen a sluggish Wemby when he comes out. We're like, does Wemby even want to play? I think the 2 days off that they had actually helped them. Also, what you just said, Stephon Castle, he comes out and he's aggressive.
And then what they did was they had Wemby as the roam guy. He was guarding Josh Hart. That's why Josh Hart was having so many wide open threes, because he was standing in the paint. He was giving him the Draymond Green, Kendrick Perkins treatment. I'm a sag Ben Wallace. I'm a sag all the way off. We're not going to even contest your shots. All the credit to the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs did what they were supposed to do, and they made adjustments on both ends of the floor. Offensively, Stephon Castle set the tone. Their favorite offensive set is a horn set. That is a Stephon Castle with the ball in his hands, Wemby at one elbow, and another guard or wing player at the other elbow, and they set this high double screen action where they try to get Wemby with a lob at the basket. They was taking that lob away. Stephon Castle made an adjustment, and he was attacking the paint and finishing at the basket. And when he drove off the horns, instead of probing, he actually got downhill, and the couple finishes that he did have, it opened up, and so all of a sudden we started seeing lobs to Wemby for dunks, for dunks, for dunks. Defensively,
Carl Anthony Towns didn't do. That's because of the Spurs' defense as well. They're locked in defensively. When you look at Wemby get that block against Sherman, that rotation is crazy. If you look at how they closed out, they was rotating. They was, boom, yo, get this person. And then Sherman thinks he has a drive, Wemby recovers. So they're locked in defensively.
But that adjustment was only the beginning, because behind this defensive explosion is something far more terrifying. San Antonio may be building a core capable of dominating the league for years.
And the thing about them is, you talk about ascending talent, Wemby is just at the launching point. Stephon Castle is launching. Dylan Harper, I think, is going to end up being their second best player, maybe as soon as this year. You could certainly argue that he was in the finals. So their core, I mean, they could have 3 All-NBA players as soon as this season. I think, obviously Wemby's, I expect to be the MVP frontrunner. Stephon Castle's going to be in the All-NBA conversation if he can stay healthy and keep his trajectory. It might be a little bit early for Harper, but he's on his way. And then
Jackson wants to know if you paid off the Wemby injury amendment, which I don't even remember what it was from the year before.
Yes, I paid Bontemps went out to, it was a lunch, so I paid it off. I sure did.
Yeah.
Bontemps was so determined not to pay off his bet that he left the pod.
I know, no kidding. It's one of his unfinished pieces of business.
Now, the Spurs did have one pretty significant loss this offseason. They lost Sean Sweeney, their associate head coach, the architect of their defense. Now, pretty good foundation for a defense if you're going to be an architect is to have Victor Wembanyama. But they brought in Billy Donovan. I'm not sure if Donovan's going to run their defense. I'm not sure exactly how that.
A fascinating hire by Mitch Johnson and Billy Donovan. Like I tried to think back to something comparable to it. I think Larry Brown came in as an assistant at one point, in his career, but that's an amazing addition to your bench.
Yeah. And, but again, so much young talent. I think Carter Bryant's got a chance to be a pretty significant contributor this year.
Yeah, Carter was over in Paris with the guys working out. So Carter Bryant's got some upside. Talk about a guy who was a big time athlete who was just beginning to harness what he can do. That is the definition of raw talent right there. So I agree with you.
But again, they won 62 games last year, and Wemby missed what it ended up being 19, I think.
Well, he got the exception to, he was a little bit under, right, the 65, and he got they kicked it over the edge, right? So
the NBA Cup exception, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I hate going
I know.
over. I
We
don't
gotta have
like
some
that.
conflict.
I know. Okay, so Spurs at 60.5, or Thunder at 60.5, Spurs at 59.5, and now we have a moat, a separation, a border, because all the way down, Vegas, DraftKings thinks there's only 250 win teams in the West. And they both are going to win 60, basically.
The Spurs may have just unleashed a nightmare on the entire NBA, because Victor Wembanyama is no longer the only reason San Antonio is terrifying. Stephon Castle is exploding. Dylan Harper is rising. And suddenly, the Spurs could have 3 all-NBA caliber players. Wemby came out and set the tone. After looking sluggish at times, the 2 days off appeared to make a difference. He was aggressive, locked in, and San Antonio built the entire defense around his presence. But the real difference? The Spurs adjusted. And that adjustment started with Wembanyama becoming a defensive roamer. And the way they used Wemby defensively was only half of the nightmare. San Antonio put Wembanyama on Josh Hart and essentially dared him to shoot. Wemby wasn't glued to Hart. He was sitting in the paint. That meant whenever the offense tried to attack, San Antonio suddenly had a 7'4" wall waiting at the rim. And when the ball moved, the Spurs rotated perfectly. Look at the block on Shannon. The rotation is incredible. The defense closes out, shifts, recovers, and just when Shannon thinks he has an opening, Wemby appears. That wasn't luck. That was preparation. San Antonio locked in on both ends, and that defensive discipline is what turned Wembanyama from a great defender into a defensive weapon, capable of controlling the entire floor. But then, Castle made the adjustment that completely changed San Antonio's offense. The Spurs love running their horn set. Castle has the ball. Wemby sits at one elbow. Another guard or wing takes the other. The goal is simple: create the opportunity for Wembanyama to receive a lob. But the defense took that lob away. So Castle stopped waiting. He attacked. Instead of probing, he went downhill and finished at the basket. And once Castle started getting into the paint, everything opened up. The defense collapsed on him. The lob became available again. And suddenly, it was. Castle drive, Wemby dunk. Castle drive, Wemby dunk. That is what makes this partnership so dangerous. Take away Wemby, Castle attacks. Stop Castle, Wemby gets the lob. There is no comfortable defensive answer. And this is where the story gets much bigger than one game. Wembanyama is expected to be an MVP frontrunner. Castle is entering the All-NBA conversation if he stays healthy and continues this trajectory. And then there is Dylan Harper. Harper may not be ready for All-NBA immediately, but the talent is obvious. San Antonio could realistically have 3 players developing towards superstar status. Wemby is the foundation. Castle is becoming the aggressive creator. Harper could become the second scoring engine. And suddenly, the Spurs aren't building around one superstar. They're building a monster core. But there is one major problem. The architect of their defense is gone, and that loss could determine whether this young powerhouse actually becomes a championship machine. San Antonio lost Sean Sweeney, their associate head coach and one of the key architects of their defense. That's a serious loss. Because Wembanyama gives you an unbelievable foundation, but somebody still has to build the system around him. The Spurs brought in Billy Donovan, creating one of the most fascinating coaching changes in the league. And now the question is simple. Can San Antonio keep the defensive identity that helped produce 62 wins? Because expectations are no longer modest. The Spurs won 62 games last season. Now their projected win total is around 59.5 to 60.5 games. Vegas isn't treating them like a promising young team anymore.
They're treating them like a contender that has to prove it again. And that's why the Spurs might be the most dangerous young team in basketball. Think about what San Antonio could become.
Wembanyama chasing the MVP. Castle developing into an all-NBA level guard. Harper rising as another potential star. And behind them, young talent like Carter Bryant still waiting for his opportunity. That is what makes this Spurs team so dangerous. They're not finished. They already won 62 games last season. They already reached the NBA Finals. And now they're entering another season with their most important player still ascending. Wemby isn't supposed to be at his peak yet. Castle isn't supposed to be at his peak yet. Harper is only beginning to show what he can become. So imagine what happens if all three take another step at the same time. Suddenly, San Antonio isn't just a team with a superstar. They're a team with multiple players capable of changing a playoff series. And that's when the Western Conference becomes a completely different battlefield. Because you can build a game plan for one superstar. But what happens when there are three? What happens when taking away Wemby opens the floor for Castle? When stopping Castle creates opportunities for Wemby? And when Harper eventually becomes good enough to punish defenses for focusing too heavily on either one? That's the nightmare. The Spurs aren't simply trying to return to the top. They may be building something that stays there. But there's still one massive question hanging over this entire experiment. Can San Antonio maintain its elite defense after losing Sean Sweeney? If the answer is yes, then the league may have a much bigger problem than anyone expected. Because Wembanyama might not be the Spurs' entire future. He might be the first warning. Thank you for watching Sport Current. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video to support the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss the latest NFL and WNBA news, breaking stories, game updates, trades, and the biggest moments in American sports. Stay tuned for more updates, and we'll see you in the next video right here on Sport Current.